we are finally feeling good again, and what better way to ruin your life than by playing top tier again. We are playing out the J-11B, and honestly, it's one of the better flankers that you can play right now. It's still a flanker, however, and I'm not a big fan of the gameplay loop, but honestly, it is pretty good. This is a personal bias, and I can look past that and see that this thing has some actual performance going on. It has the same kind of thrust as an Su-27 SM. At high speed you have more, at low speed you have less. You have an actually workable radar. Now it's not as good as something like the Su-30 for example, but it's a very big step up over something like the Su-27 that you will find in the Russian tech tree. And because it's not in the Russian tech tree, you are gonna find some actual missiles that are pretty damn good. We have PL-12s, which I think are better than R-77s. And we have the PLH. Now the issue is that you have to take 4 of them, meaning that you can only carry 6 radar missiles, meaning that at the start of the game you don't have that much impact. You really need to be wary of the missiles that you're launching, and you need to get in position to actually use the IR missiles. You can of course try to only BVR and use the PLH for self-defense, but with 6 missiles only, this basically means that you're not going to get much done ever. Because the early stages, if you shoot 3 or 4 missiles in the BVR phase, you only have 2 left, meaning that you are essentially useless in the late and mid game, and you don't want this to happen. Now here we are fighting multiple demons at the same time, and my first issue with this plane is not so much the plane itself, it was the teams. For some reason I started off with a 24% win rate. We clearly won that one, however, because we are the GOAT of the game. But keep in mind that you want to play this thing a little bit more aggressively, since you don't have that abundance of missiles like with the Su-30, so you need to play it a little bit closer. Keep in mind, you are still in a flanker, and most of the planes that you run into will be able to outduel you if you get into the merge. And this plane does not have R-73s to crutch on. However, you are at 13.7 instead of 14.0, and very often you will not find yourself in those full Eurofighter and Ravioli lobbies that will absolutely piece you apart. You still get lobbies with a lot of them, do not get me wrong, 14.0 is still a very common place at this BR. It's a lot more playable. Now in the background here you can see that I tried to play it a little bit more aggressively, but in the end I got the entire enemy team on my 6, so I made sure to disengage a little, and I distracted like 5 people at the same time. I flew towards my teammate in the Su-30, and they didn't follow me. So what ends up happening is that they kind of give me their side and their 6, while the Su-30 is also behind them, and I can come in from the second row. The way you play this thing is kind of debatable. There's multiple ways to do it. I preferred to play a little bit more aggressively in the up tiers, because I know that my flight model doesn't hang, I don't have the abundance of missiles, and I can't really carry 1v many in this thing reliably, so I decided to try to make my mark at the start of the game and see if I can snowball it from there. Now this didn't really work out at all, because my team kept dying despite doing that, and I was just getting absolutely stomped. At one point I lost 15 games in a row, and I managed to get like 3, maybe 4 kills those games every time, but I still died in all of them, because I ended up in like a 1v7, as you saw at the, I think it was the intro clip where I did the funny meme, haha. But yeah, terrible experience. Let's go back into the game. Now here we have a bit of a down tier, and I know that in the down tier I can make the performance work a little bit better, because well, I don't have those ridiculous airframes in the lobby that will destroy everything in the game. The flanker at 13.7 is more than fine. Unfortunately, with the compression going on, it stops being fine, because well, there is just these planes that are so much better at such a small BR jump up. Now here we have a down tier again. I know I can take my time a little bit more, because I have the performance to do so. And I'm also able to get a little bit closer, be a little bit more aggressive, and see if I can actually get those missiles on target and get them all in the no escape zone. And if you do that, you're very likely to get more kills, and you're much less likely to get slammed out of the air by some Eurofighter going Mach fuck on the other side of the map, which is just terrific. And in these games, the flanker feels pretty good to play. The issue is that these games are unfortunately not that frequent. Now they do happen, they're very fun, but very often you're going to get into the game with the Eurofighters and the F-15E that are basically untouchable if they play it right, because they are just so much faster And on top of that, the A120s have more range. And if these guys play it right, you basically can't touch them. It's very hard to close the gap. You don't have the amount of missiles to constantly keep them defending. They have more missiles than you. And all the same amount, but they're very annoying to play into if they play it right. Now, luckily, at top tier, most people don't. Meaning that it's still very much doable, but they are still very annoying to actually play into. Now, you can see in the background, I poke in, I start notching, get my missiles off, they're in the no escape zone, so I know that these missiles are basically going to hit unless they dodge them properly, and they don't. Now there's another kill right there, we kind of disengage and we loop back around to the back line of my team. You can tell that I'm kind of just being rear guard here, and every time my team moves forward, I move back in behind them. Now there's one issue with this playstyle, and that is that you might end up with very little kills since they're all gonna be killed by your friendly. So you do want to be making sure that you shoot at people that are not actually being shot at. So you can do this by either shooting at the back row instead of the front row. This way you get a bit of a bigger chance that your team isn't shooting at them just yet, because they will be shooting at the closest guy first. But keep in mind, with 6 missiles you might end up wasting a couple of them. After being rear guard, you are a little bit above, so it means that once the furball develops, you can get above and behind them and use your PL8. Look on the left side of my screen. That was an absolute landmine. That thing was going like 2 kilometers an hour, and that is, well, I guess it's an air mine, har, but it's just a major skill issue, I guess. Now here we start going in a little bit later. We staggered with our team, and instead of being aggressive, I tried to be second row from the start, and it ended up working out pretty decently. Now, this didn't end up working out very often, because my teams were honestly so bad that I couldn't even rear gun for anyone, because my team would be going everywhere. We'd have one guy on the left, one guy in the middle, one guy on top, one guy scamming the deck, and there were people literally everywhere scattered about, and I couldn't really assist a dedicated group because there were no groups. People were just moving out as a massive line. You know, when you spawn in like Golan Heights, air spawn, and you all spawn in this massive line. Imagine if they all flew in like that, thinking that we are like a medieval formation. It was almost impossible to assist anyone like that. In this game, my team was flying a little bit more in groups, so I'm able to stay behind them, be the sniper, and just kind of pick people off. Because this is one of those up tiers where half the enemy team is in 14.0s, and I don't really have the ability to contest them other than with my missiles. My airframe, while still pretty good, keep in mind the uprated engines means that I'm actually able to hold my speed in the defense. I still don't want to get close to these guys. I'm going to get absolutely rinsed. So I try to keep my distance a little bit in these lobbies, but if your team doesn't actually hold a little bit of a formation where they kind of fly together, it's almost impossible to support all of them, because they are just scattered about everywhere, and I don't have the range on my missiles. I don't have the amount of missiles to just kind of lob them off. And when your team does stay together, you can play it like this, and that is how you play almost every top tier, but with a flanker you are kind of forced to do so. Now here, I think that the biggest change of this plane is going to be for the sim community, because the radar actually works. It sees when you are looking at something, and the refresh rate is just so much better. I mean, look on the right, I'm actually able to keep track of multiple opponents without any issue whatsoever. I'm just pointing in my nose, I'm keeping it kind of narrow, because it's kind of a habit from playing the flankers, I guess. We guide in the missile, we turn out, I just see too many guys there, and this is a little bit of more of a down tier. So I'm gonna get one missile off, I see that entire group coming in, and I disengage. Now there is 2 things that I still want to talk about. First one is the RWR and the Mars. Mars turns off every game now, or turns on. So I have to turn it off every time, because you will absolutely blow through your countermeasures in like 2 or 3 missiles. I turn it off and I just rely on the sound that it cues. If it starts beeping at me, I know that the missile is going to be close and I need to be a little bit more defensive. Secondly is going to be the radar. And now every time you have someone on site and you de-lock them or whatever, your radar doesn't reset to the middle again, and you need to bind another key. It's called like reset radar sight, scope, bore sight. I don't know exactly what it is, but you need to be able to reset it back to the middle, because often it just gets stuck looking directly into the sky. And it's incredibly annoying. Now I'll put it on the screen so you can see what it is. I forgot the actual keybind and I'm doing this in a single take as per usual. But yeah, another key and you have to press Mars every game now. I just turned it off before and it would be turned off for the rest of the session. Unfortunately, that isn't possible anymore. Now here we engage the furball again. We held back a little bit, we have a little bit of altitude, and I'm in position to actually use the PL8s. I noticed missiles coming up, I managed to go over the missile, we kind of notch it, but we just kind of outpull it, drop down, and instantly slam the entire lobby into submission. And we kind of left our mark. We've already won the game here. And now we don't really need to do much anymore. Now I do want to be careful with that Mirage. I don't want to dive on him going Mach 12. Because this thing will compress at high speed. And if you do engage someone when you're going like 12 times the speed, let me tell you, you are going to overshoot. Because this thing turns into a bit of a boat. Now luckily, it's not like with the Su-30 where it also turns into a boat. But at low speed, you lose all your speed instantly. This is infinitely more playable, and I do think that the airframe is much better despite not having thrust vectoring. And I know this is controversial to some of you, but the Su-30 is an absolute boat. It's all about the missiles. R-77 ones are good, the radar is good, but the airframe is actually among the worst. And the best thing you can do very often is try the Cobra and maybe R-73 trade with the guy, but in an actual lobby, this is never really going to end up working out. So this is probably one of the better flankers that you can play. However, the kit just isn't that tailored for actual air lobby. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you all for watching, and you'll see me in the next one.